Maybe that mild-mannered dude in the corner was really the big bad guy. Perhaps the hero was dead the whole time. Or maybe everything we've seen is somebody's hallucination. Whatever the reveal, these memorable movie moments caught us off guard and left us talking for years to come. Spoilers ahead. Usually movies are told in chronological order, but much like its protagonist, Dr. Louise Banks, arrival isn't confined to a single time. In the movie's opening, we watch Louise lose her beloved daughter to disease. Naturally, we assume this is happening early in her life, well before the renowned linguist is asked by the military to communicate with the heptapods, mysterious aliens who've landed on Earth. Her job is to translate their complex language so humans can talk with these otherworldly visitors. As she delves deeper into their circular alphabet, though, the heptapod language changes her perspective of time, allowing her to experience the past, present, and future at once. Before long, we discover that Louise actually hasn't had her child yet. Those flashbacks are actually flash-forwards, visions of what's to come, courtesy of the alien language. Louise now exists outside of time, or more accurately, throughout every moment simultaneously. As a result, her perspective on concepts like love are radically altered by the heptapod's gift. Sure, she now knows that heartbreak is coming, but she heads into the future anyway, because she knows there's a lot of joy waiting there too. It might just be the most emotional twist in all of science fiction, and one that will leave you both thinking and wiping away a few tears. A Beautiful Mind finds an Oscar-nominated Russell Crowe playing John Nash, a real-life Nobel Prize-winning mathematician who lived a rather unusual life. Early in the film, Nash is drafted by Department of Defense agent William Parcher to analyze magazines and newspapers for hidden Russian codes.
You are, quite simply, the best natural code breaker I have ever seen.
It's an intense assignment, but when he's not engaged in high-stakes espionage, John seems to lead a normal life with a supportive wife and an incredibly close BFF, Charles. Whenever Charles shows up to visit, he brings along his adorable niece, Marcy, who always brings a smile to John's face. Unfortunately, of the four most important people in John's life, only one of them is actually a living, breathing human being. In reality, John is suffering from paranoid schizophrenia, and the incredibly creepy Parcher is just a hallucination. There are no secret messages, no Soviet spies lurking in the shadows, and no radium implanted in his arm. The real blow, however, is that Charles and Marcy are also products of his imagination. Unless you know the true story, the twist comes as a devastating surprise and sends this Academy Award-winning film in a disturbing direction. Colossal is one of the strangest movies ever made. This fantasy flick finds Anne Hathaway as the alcoholic Gloria, recently single and moving back to her hometown. But as the self-destructive woman soon discovers, her problems are a lot bigger than just the bottle. Gloria is psychically linked to a giant Godzilla-like monster, and whenever she stumbles across a particular playground, the kaiju mysteriously appears in the city of Seoul, South Korea.
What is he doing?
It's dancing.
Is dancing like...
Fortunately, Gloria has a good friend to help with all the booze and oversized beasts. Jason Sudeikis plays her childhood friend, a nice guy named Oscar. The moment Gloria comes back to town, Oscar does everything he can to help her feel at home. He gives her furniture for her empty house, builds her up with all sorts of compliments, and even gives her a job working at his bar, which is probably not the best place for an alcoholic to work. But then Gloria realizes there's a lot of darkness behind Oscar's winning smile. For one, he's also linked to another giant creature that appears in the South Korean capital, and while he pretends to be a good dude, we quickly learn he's a violent, manipulative control freak, more monstrous than any kaiju. And when Gloria tries to get away from this creep, he threatens to murder countless Koreans with his robot avatar.
Either you drink that beer, or I'll go take a walk through the park later.
This turn from best friend to abuser is pretty shocking, largely thanks to Sudeikis' affable persona. That said, there were probably a lot of women who saw this coming, well aware that the real world is full of Oscars. One of the most unsettling sci-fi movies ever made, Ex Machina finds a mild-mannered computer programmer named Caleb winning the contest of a lifetime. He's been picked to spend a week conducting a bizarre Turing test with his billionaire boss Nathan, played here by a super creepy show-stealing Oscar Isaac. A brilliant inventor, Nathan has created an artificial intelligence named Ava, and he wants to see if his creation can convince Caleb she's a sentient being. Caleb quickly falls under Ava's spell, and soon the programmer plans to free his crush from Nathan's grasp.
Do you have people who test you and might switch you off?
No, I don't.
Then why do I?
After all, the tech tycoon has her locked up and plans on essentially killing her. Plus, Nathan's interest in Ava isn't just scientific. This guy has a thing for building female robots that he can imprison and control. Using his own tech savvy, Caleb sets Ava free, and seconds later, the liberated android slices through Nathan like he's a pat of hot butter. If this was your typical sci-fi flick, Ava and Caleb would probably run off together. But in Ex Machina, things take a hard left turn when Ava locks up Caleb and leaves the screaming programmer to die of starvation. It's a gut punch of an ending, especially since Caleb seems so sympathetic. Sadly, there's a good chance that he would have jeopardized her shot at freedom in the outside world. In the end, he had to be tested and switched off after all. It's no surprise that the Armitage family are the bad guys in Get Out. When Missy Armitage and her husband Dean first meet our everyman hero, Chris Washington, they're way too friendly and far too polite, which is never a good sign in a horror movie.
By the way, I would have voted for Obama for a third term if I could. Best president in my lifetime, hands down.
I agree.
Then there's their super creepy son Jeremy, who's oozing with menace whenever he comes slinking onto the screen. But with all these racists surrounding poor Chris, his girlfriend Rose seems totally on his side. She'll definitely help him escape her family's clutches, right? Unfortunately, Rose is probably the most evil member of the entire family. After finding a box of incriminating photos, Chris starts to realize he's the victim of some really cruel catfishing, but he still desperately hopes that Rose is on his side when the Armitage clan blocks his path. He begs Rose to give him the car keys so he can escape, and for a moment, it seems like she might pick her boyfriend over her own flesh and blood. She doesn't.
Where are those keys, Rose?
You know I can't give you the keys, right, babe?
The casting here is what makes the twist work so well. According to both Allison Williams and director Jordan Peele, Williams was cast because audiences would associate her with the far less evil roles that she'd played before. Sure enough, she does indeed seem pretty harmless, right up until she doesn't. Messing around with creepy European cults is never a good idea. That's a lesson our murderous anti-hero learns the hard way in Ben Wheatley's Kill List. This disturbing horror film is centered around Jay, a family man whose marriage has fallen on hard times. And oh yeah, he makes his living as a hired killer. You've got to put food on the table somehow, and Jay stands to make a tidy paycheck by killing 3 people for a mysterious client who wants his contract signed in blood. The weird thing is, the targets don't behave like typical victims. Instead of begging for their lives, they actually thank Jay when he shows up for some hammer time. Things go from eerie to straight up hellish when Jay tries to kill his 3rd victim. Instead of finding his target, he stumbles into a cult right out of The Wicker Man. The whole assassination scheme was part of an elaborate occult ritual, and it comes to a bloody end when the pagans capture Jay, put a mask over his face, and force him to fight a cloaked hunchback. The assassin makes short work of his opponent, but after turning this guy into a shish kebab, Jay discovers a horrific truth. The hunchback is really his wife and son, kidnapped by the cult and tied together with his son on his wife's back. Jay just murdered his own family, much to the delight of the deranged cult, capping off a ghastly film with a truly gruesome ending. Bong Joon-ho's Mother has a pretty standard plot for a murder mystery. A mentally challenged young man is accused of murdering a teenage girl. The police don't have any solid evidence against him, but they need to make an arrest, so they toss the disabled man in jail and trick him into confessing. Needless to say, his devoted mother knows her son is innocent, and she goes from a mild-mannered widow to South Korea's Sherlock Holmes, chasing down leads, interrogating suspects, and putting together a case to free her son from jail. She even discovers a possible scheme involving blackmail and a mysterious old man. Now, in your typical murder mystery, the mom would discover the killer's true identity and clear her kid's name. However, Mother subverts all those expectations when the titular mom makes a simple but shocking discovery. Her son really did it. Yeah, he's a sweet kid, and yes, he's mentally disabled, but that didn't stop him from caving in a girl's head. It's a smart little twist that gets even twistier when the mom murders an eyewitness to protect her son. Mother spins every thriller trope on its head, but it also goes to show that nobody loves you like your mother. Every knife-wielding villain in a horror movie has a special talent for taking out their victims when they least expect it. But Ghostface, the sinister slasher from 1996's Scream, seems like he could pop up anywhere at any time. When the masked killer first arrives in the opening scene after terrorizing poor Drew Barrymore over the phone, he seems to be lurking around every single corner. There's no way anyone can move this quickly, but as victim after victim learns, there's no getting away from Ghostface. This dude is everywhere.
Please don't kill me, Mr. Ghostface. I want to be in the sequel.
In the big climax of Wes Craven's horror classic, we discover the secret behind Ghostface's teleporting powers. Final girl Sidney Prescott is running for her life. The mass murderer has shown up at a high school party, and he's slicing people left and right. Sidney has no clue who's under the mask, and we have plenty of suspects. Ghostface could be boyfriend Billy, horror movie fan Randy, goofball Stu, or even Sidney's own dad. There are so many suspects, and it's impossible to know who to trust. And that's when Sidney makes a horrific discovery. Her boyfriend Billy is Ghostface, and so is his best bud Stu. These two psychos are working together for a maximum kill count and providing each other with an alibi.
Movies don't create psychos. Movies make psychos more creative.
With two guys running around wearing Ghostface masks, it's no wonder this bad guy was making such good time. M. Night Shyamalan's extremely weird filmography has made him a punchline for many moviegoers, but he'll always have one indisputable claim to fame. He made The Sixth Sense, an all-time great horror movie with possibly the most famous twist in cinematic history. The film finds Bruce Willis playing Dr. Malcolm Crowe, an award-winning child psychologist. In the opening scene, he's shot by a disturbed patient he couldn't save, but a couple of months later, Crowe is walking around and seems perfectly okay. Well, his marriage is falling apart and his wife won't acknowledge his existence, so that isn't great. But at least he gets a chance at redemption by helping Cole Sear, a troubled boy who can, well, you know.
I see dead people.
However, Cole isn't the only one who can see spirits. The audience has been looking at a dead guy since the start of the movie. After trying so hard to talk to his wife, Crowe finally realizes why she won't respond. He's a ghost. That gunshot in the beginning of the film was actually fatal, and he's been a dead man walking ever since, despite never realizing it himself. It was an ending that sent shockwaves through Hollywood, and Shyamalan has been trying to recapture that glory ever since. But while a film or two has come close, The Sixth Sense still stands supreme as the perfect Shyamalan twist. Everybody knows the twist from The Empire Strikes Back. Even moviegoers who have never seen a single Star Wars movie know Darth Vader is actually Luke Skywalker's dad. The twist has permeated the pop culture consciousness and given us one of the most memorable and misquoted lines of all time.
La la la, Luke, I am your father.
Back in 1980, however, the Luke Vader revelation absolutely floored Star Wars fans. Most of the cast and crew didn't even know the truth about Luke's family tree. According to Mark Hamill, the original script read differently.
The way we filmed it, Vader said, "You don't know the truth. Obi-Wan killed your father."
Famously, only Hamill, James Earl Jones, George Lucas, and director Irvin Kershner were aware of the twist. So when Vader finally announced his parentage, everybody was gasping, from audiences to the actors themselves. And this shocking moment did a whole lot more than elicit gasps. The Dad Vader reveal sent the series in a completely new direction and laid the groundwork for countless additional Star Wars films. Has any other movie twist had such an enormous impact? The Last Jedi is one of the twistiest chapters in the entire Star Wars franchise. We learn that Rey's parents are nobodies, Big Bad Snoke gets cut in half, Luke was a Force-induced illusion the whole time. It's twist after crazy twist, but the biggest shock comes early in the film when Luke Skywalker reveals his Jedi days are done. To set the scene, we have to go back to a long time ago to 2015, when The Force Awakens was teasing audiences with the promise of Luke Skywalker. It had been over 30 years since fans had seen the beloved Jedi Knight, and the entire premise of Episode 7 involved a group of heroes searching for the legendary warrior. Finally, at the end of the film, Rey finds the bearded Skywalker standing on a majestic cliff. As that John Williams music starts to swell, Rey hands the Jedi his long-lost lightsaber, and that's where the film ends, with Rey reaching out to the hooded silent hero. Audiences had to wait 2 whole years to see what would happen, but obviously, Luke was going to take the lightsaber and lead the charge against the First Order, right? Not exactly. In the years since we last saw him, Luke has turned his back on the Force and wants the Jedi to die out. This little twist flew in the face of fans' expectations, but really, they should have listened when Yoda told us all those years ago that the Jedi were never meant to be great warriors. If Terry Gilliam, Karl Marx, Spike Lee, and Rod Serling all teamed up to make a movie, it might look like Sorry to Bother You. Written and directed by Boots Riley, this movie is absolutely insane in all the right ways, and no description can do it justice. It is without a doubt the most anti-capitalist film to ever come out of Hollywood, and it features perhaps the most deranged twist of the 21st century so far. The plot follows a promising young telemarketer named Cassius Cash Green, who finds success in sales by smooth-talking his customers using what the film calls his white voice.
Like this young blood.
Hey, Mr. Kramer, this is Langston from Regal View. I didn't catch you at the wrong time, did I?
Soon, Cash is promoted to the big time, which involves selling slaves to giant companies, and eventually he crosses paths with a psycho billionaire played by Armie Hammer, with big plans for the future of business. Up until this point, the movie has been incredibly weird, but when Cash discovers the billionaire's plans, the film absolutely loses its mind. As it turns out, the billionaire is turning people into half-human, half-horse monsters, so he can create a powerful but malleable workforce. That's right, Armie Hammer is turning people into horses. And if that wasn't wild enough, the movie ends with Cash suddenly turning into an equestrian himself. It's totally bonkers, and no matter how good you are at guessing twists, you'll never see this nightmare coming. From the Mandarin reveal in Iron Man 3 to the Thanos snap in Infinity War, the MCU had its fair share of shocking twists. One of its most jaw-dropping moments, however, comes in Spider-Man Homecoming, when Peter Parker picks up his date for the homecoming dance and finds something way more intimidating than the average suburban dad. Throughout this superhero flick, the wall crawler is trying to find a balance between homework and crime fighting, hanging out with friends and trading punches with bad guys. You can't really go to parties or participate in the academic decathlon when you've got an entire neighborhood to protect. And it's hard to get a date when you're constantly trying to fight the Vulture, a winged thief who sells weapons made with alien technology to local thugs. Eventually, Peter puts his crime fighting on pause and works up the nerve to ask his crush, Liz Allen, to the dance. He gets his suit, learns to dance, buys Liz a nice corsage, and shows up at her house ready for a fun evening. That's when the door opens to reveal the Vulture himself. As it turns out, this murderous villain just so happens to be Liz's father. Suddenly, Peter isn't worried about making a good impression. He's just worried about making it through the night alive, which becomes even more difficult when the Vulture realizes why Peter's acting even more nervous than the usual high school kid meeting his girlfriend's father.
Very lucky that he was there that day.
Good old Spider-Man.
Like Uncle Ben always used to say, with great power comes a really complicated love life. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Looper videos about your favorite movies are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.